36.
Okay, is it, how, do you know about, have you heard of this line, this thing, the Sunny Dome on line 36? You weren't listening? Now you, how do you know about the Sunny Dome? We were talking about it. Tell me what it looks like. Just tell me just generally. What's in your mind about this? Like, oh, man, I'll always bring a book now. I need to know what Sunny Dome, what does it look like? Just imagine. Oh, okay. What's it made out of? What are the pleasure, what's the pleasure, caves have what? The caves made out of what? What are the caves made out of?
The caves?
Yes.
The volcanoes?
No?
Ice.
Ice, thank you.
Ice.
How do you, now how did you, but you don't have a book in front of you. How do you know that?
Listening with my ears.
Oh, just tell me about what you see in your mind then.
Cold.
Cold.
Cave with ice.
A cold cave with ice.
And it's sunny.
And it's sunny.
So it's bright.
And so it's bright.
It's white. And then light is like reflective.
What dome?
Melting.
There's no dome. I don't see a dome in this room.
It's in your head.
It's in my
You're making it up yourself.
Like the tiger.
Like the tiger.
Yeah.
Imagination.
So did he says if I could remember that damsel, if I could remember the damsel with the dulcimer, if I could remember the damsel with the dulcimer. But he doesn't remember. Whoa, hi.
It just doesn't work.
Sorry. He says, if I could remember the damsel with the dulcimer. But of course he totally forgot about her and never remembered her, right?
No.
No, how do you know?
Because he's talking about her.
What?
He's talking about it.
He's talking about her. He does remember her. So he does revive the dome. He builds it in the air because, is it Mr. Shira? Mr. Shira? No. Wait. Does it begin with a J? I'm sorry. Can you tell me? Parker. Parker can even see the dome. What? It's in his head, but it's in your head too. He built it in your head too, right? So he built it, how? How did he build it? Through the poem, right? Because we know, how big is this place? Twice 5 miles of fertile ground, right? We know about, where is the sea?
Underground.
Underground. It's immeasurable, yeah. We know that he built it in the poem, which poetry, it's lyric poetry, right? And remember, going all the way back to our discussion of the lyric, it's very much like songs, right? Not just country songs, okay? So, but it's like music, like the dulcimer, right? Now, let's go a little farther. He would build that sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there. So if you hear, you can see it, right? We build it in our mind. He builds it in words. We put it together in our minds. And all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware. Because what inspired this poem?
Fear.
What? Drugs, opium. Ah, no. And all should cry, beware, beware. His flashing eyes, his floating hair. Doesn't that sound great? You know, flashing eyes, floating hair, creepy. Weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise. Doesn't it kind of sound like, well, y'all don't remember the 60s and the 70s and the LSD experiments and all that. But this whole idea that do drugs actually help you write better poetry. My question for you, though, is did he really have a dream? I mean, in high school, they like to teach this poem as though, see, he was doing drugs, and then people think it's cool. Same thing you get here, right? All should cry, beware, beware. And weave, it sounds like a spell or something, weave a circle around him thrice. Did that? Where's the title, and where does the fiction begin? Where does the story begin?
I think that
At the very beginning, yes. The first line of the poem is not in Xanadu to Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dome decree. The first line of his artistic creation is the following fragment. He says he forgot the rest of the poem, but does he? What you want to look for is there unity? There's perfect unity. He says, oh, I can't remember. I can't remember that sunny dome and the caves of ice and the river, blah, blah, blah. He says he can't remember, but he does remember. He writes it all down, and then he says, oh, I wish I could remember the Abyssinian maid with the dulcimer. He does. And he says, because if I could remember, I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice. I would build it in the air. He did. And we know that it's complete because he built the dome. We've had the description of the dome, the sunny dome. We've seen the caves of ice. So at the end, it's not like he breaks off. He doesn't go, and then there was some other stuff, and I can't remember what it was. He says, there's a dome, there's, it's like, and he goes back. So what he's talking about, I mean, this business of, oh, it's a psychological experiment? Oh, come on. Wordsworth and Coleridge were not into science. They were into spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, right? Now, it's true that he did use opium, but, I mean, it's not the same. I mean, he used opium as a medicine, but he also is using the opium not as in taking the chemical and consuming it. He's using it artistically, fakely. He's making up a story saying, I took this opium, had this dream, so it makes it cooler. It's like, ooh, maybe he really is in touch with something cool, out there. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that, what am I trying to say? It's part of the story, right? He is the narrator is not the poet. Coleridge is not the author that is mentioned. Coleridge is the author, but Coleridge is not the one that he says, in the summer of the year 1797, the author then in ill health. He's made up, he's created an author as a character. And you have to be careful about that when you're reading novels too. When you get a narrator who says, and then I knew this, and then I knew that, you don't always trust your narrator. Because your narrator doesn't, don't trust the narrator to tell you the truth, because the narrator may have an angle, or the narrator is somebody created by the author. So, that's another poem. It's another poem about poetry to a certain extent. He's writing a poem about writing this poem. But you have to, and be careful, because especially if you're going to go teach English someday, a lot of high school teachers just read it and say, well, here's something that he wrote while he was high. No. That's not it. He's writing a poem pretending that the author is high. He's got a character that he makes be high. It sounds cool and like he's in touch with the sublime or something transcendent. Okay. Yay.